So the first thing you really need to think about if you're thinking about buying a property or even just thinking about your financial future long term is really, I think, to talk through your lifestyle and what you really want out of life, really. I mean, and go quite deep on this. You know, if you've got a partner, you know, a kid's on the cards, you know, where do you really want to live longer term? What sort of work do you want to do? Like, you have to go real deep on what you really want in life to set goals and not just follow goals that society want to set for you, for example. Now, let's say that you want to buy a home because of the stability and you want to raise a family within that and all the meaning. That's a very admirable goal and there's nothing wrong with that. But I guess it's trying to set the right goal in a place that's really going to give you a lot of meaning and happiness and etc. So setting the right goal, I think, comes down to really understanding your values first and really understanding what's going to give you meaning in your life rather than just doing financial goals for the sake of it. So firstly, it's about really having a conversation around, you know, what they really want out of life, you know, how their role in work, you know, the purpose, the family connection and whether they want a family. Those sort of questions I think are key, and also where they want to live, like what sort of things do they do for fun in the community they want to be a part of, etc. When we have those conversations, they're not just talking, we don't actually ask clients what their values are, but everyone has a different like life plan, I guess, and everyone's, you know, have got a different past and want a different future, and everyone's got different preferences in terms of what they like to do on weekends. And so from a home and property point of view, you know, some people are happy to live in smaller places but be near the city because they love to be near the city, but some people want to be more in the country around nature. And so, you know, that sort of helps us to guide through and think through, well, what would be the right type of property to give them that lifestyle, but also make sure it's a great investment for them, because there's no point buying a property, taking on a lot of debt, a lot of stress. If there's a real negative investment there, you might just rent it or look at a different investment strategy rather than buying a poor asset just to live in it. So society's pressure is enormous, and it goes in waves from fear to FOMO, really. For example, you know, 2020, was a year where there's lots of fear when COVID was, but 2021, there's lots of FOMO with markets are booming, and you can go back every year. And when there is FOMO in the market, which is, you know, prices are running on people, fear goes through the roof because people feel like they're never going to buy. And what ends up happening is media, family, colleagues at work, brothers and sisters, friends, everyone just perpetuates this pressure that you've got to go and buy a property. And what ends up happening is people, you know, get really, feel like they're not successful unless they don't own a property, which is absolute nonsense. And so what you really need to do is switch off everyone else, educate yourself on really how the property market works, and what is the right decision for you. Now that may be just saving, not just getting on the ladder, which is one of those funny sayings that I don't believe in, and then figuring out what's the right property for you longer term, and just going on your own course, switching off from everyone else, controlling what you can control. A lot of that time is your income and what you're saving and how you're living your life. And then educating yourself on what you really do need to do to get a loan and to buy a property, etc. So if you're doing all that, then if the market's running on you or everyone else is buying, then it's out of your control. You're just focusing on what you can control, and you've got your own plan and you'll achieve it in your own time. Don't worry about everyone else. To be frank, I've seen thousands of people. Most people stuff it up, and the people who talk about property the most, you know, people who have bought a couple of properties are usually stuffing it up the most because they've bought a number of poor properties. And family have been doing it maybe a couple of times over their 30 or 40 years, and so they're not experts. And just be careful of who you listen to as well, like work colleagues, etc. Don't outsource your due diligence. Do your own research and education. So while the goal might be to get a family home, you know, in say a capital city, etc., that may or may not be achievable today. You know, based on your savings, based on your income, and what you want may be some time away. So you may need to come up with an alternative strategy to help you achieve that goal rather than just buying that dream asset today. So what you may do is just buy a great investment property and pay that off, or you might buy a property that's a good investment, not your dream home, but you know that in 5 or 10 years time, you might sell it. You might potentially buy the great house, the location and the land for your future home, but the house might be almost a knockdown or might need a big renovation. You know, there are lots of different strategies that you may want to consider to help you get to that goal, rather than just getting the dream property straight away. And it's about trying to figure out what's the right strategy for you, because they've all got pros and cons, you know. And so when you sort of have set really strong goals, that's great. But then you need to have an understanding of what strategies have you got to get there, because you can definitely make a mistake where those strategies ultimately won't get you closer to your goal. They sometimes can take you further away. One of the most powerful things to do is to have those big, if you've got a partner or if you are single and you want a partner in the future, you start to think through, what do you really want out of life? And you know, family is one of the biggest things that really drive property, because property is a lifestyle asset. It's something that you live in. If you do want to have a family, you're going to need something with space, let's say, more space than if you say a couple, etc. So having an understanding there around that, also understanding, you know, what you do for work, you know, whether you could do that remote, or whether you're likely to be in the capital city, just having a think through how your life's potentially going to progress, whether you want to live overseas, you know, whether you want an animal like a pet, for example, like a dog, you know, those sort of conversations are really important, because when you get to the property, you can say, well, I can potentially purchase that property, but it's not going to tick these boxes. I can't grow into it. You know, if we have a family, I can't have a dog. You know, it's too far away from my family. Family's really important to you, or if nature and parks. So I think when you're looking at property, you really got to think through, what sort of life do you want to live? What do you really need longer term? And you've got to try to find an asset that'll tick as many boxes of those longer term. So I think it's really important to have those conversations. We find that if you clients come to us and they haven't really thought about those things, then we send them back to have those deep conversations and then come back to us so we can make sure they're buying the right property.